It was another Monday morning. The sign on the door said private investigator, but the sign below that said closed, and I was saying yes to a third cup of coffee. It was hot and bitter, like a VPN admin keeping up with patch releases. My partner was out of town looking into a bad alibi. That case was like a TLS handshake. A lot of hellos for just one secret. My wall had a calendar for the new year, but my desk had a stack of old bills. My case log had the appeal of a code review where you couldn't tell if a developer had sneezed or was using Perl. In the case log, there was an MBA who made an OKR to close every CVE. It had a KPI that was DOA. I could go on, but the world has enough lists already. Which means this week we chat with Grant Ongers about some lists, as well as his new product security project over at OWASP. In the news segment, Qualys versus glibc, open versus boring SSL, image formats versus parsers, and more. Brew some coffee and stay tuned for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show to learn the latest tools and techniques to understand DevOps, applications, and the cloud. Your trusted source for the latest AppSec news. It's time for Application Security Weekly.
Hi, folks. I'm Adrian Sanabria, the host of Enterprise Security Weekly. Every week, we interview the most interesting folks we can find, talking about the most pressing cybersecurity issues and challenges facing the enterprise today. Myself and my co-hosts have each been in the industry for decades, long enough to see the patterns in the industry and explore where trends are going. In addition to enterprise challenges, we also follow the vendor space, the most interesting security startups emerging, technology and product trends, all the most interesting funding and acquisition announcements. Finally, we love to discuss the latest trends in tech and how they'll impact cybersecurity. If you're wondering how the latest in AI, quantum computing, cloud, and DevOps is going to impact security a few years down the road, you should follow the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast.
This is John's favorite part. This is episode 272, recorded February 5th, 2024. I'm your host, Mike Shima. I'm here with John Kinsella. Hello, John.
Good morning. I've been told this is my favorite part, so I'm going to smile and be excited about that.
Yeah. Glad to have you smiling on a Monday morning. We have Akira with us as well. Akira, you seem to be smiling as well. Good to see you.
Hi. This is my best Monday morning smile.
Well, your Monday mornings could get even better because don't let third-party risk ruin your Valentine's Day. Join Adrian Sanabria and Bill Brenner for understanding third-party risk by studying third-party breaches. Adrian loves exploring risk through real breaches and incident. Bill loves thinking about third-party risks, and they love our partner for this webcast, Process Unity. Visit securityweekly.com/Valentine Risk to register for the webcast. You'll love it. Co-founder of Secure Delivery and current OWASP Global Foundation board chair, Grant Ongers is a firm believer in security enabling delivery, not blocking it. He's well known in the international InfoSec community. Check out that recognizable beard. His 10 plus years of experience in dev, 20 years in ops, and 30 years in sec has made him a firm believer that there's no such thing as DevSecOps, just DevOps done right, and that compliance is not equal security, or the other way around. Alongside his role as CTO within Secure Delivery, Grant provides C-suite advice and guidance on security to FTSE 100 enterprises and strategic risk analysis with M&A diligence teams. Hello, Grant. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Mike. It's good to be here.
It's wonderful to have you, especially because we have, I think, at least a top 10 list of reasons why we've been anxious to have you join us. And with that hint, we do want to talk about some ProdSec capabilities, some frameworks, but Grant, there's so many top 10s out there. How come?
I think it's because everyone associates OWASP with the top 10. And everybody wants a top 10 because 10 things are easy to remember. We have 10 fingers.
Indeed.
Most of us have 10 fingers. Makes it easy to count. But yeah, top 10 the top 10 lists of top 10 things is the top 10 list I was going to be creating when Harold managed to convince me not to. But there are a lot of top 10 lists.
There are indeed. And you, of course, have a particular good perspective, insightful perspective on the lists and OWASP in general from your seat, metaphorical and literal. So I'm curious, when you look at that, what advice would you have for people who want to want 2024 to be a list or a year of perhaps another list or more lists?
Yeah, so 2023 definitely had more lists added to it. And I think one of the things that the board had, decided to get involved with doing, because there was a lot of discussion around one of those lists in particular, is that the top 10 lists need to be more aligned with the rest of the top 10 project. So you can't just create a top 10 list anymore. If you're creating something that has the top 10 in it in OWASP, then you're working with the original top 10 list team to ensure that, at least the level of rigor is the same. Because the assumption is, even though you're a lab project, you're just starting out, you're just figuring it out, you're putting together a first list before the community's even looked at it. The assumption is it's a top 10, therefore it's, at the same level that the other top 10s all need to be at. So that's changing.
And indeed, there's a pedigree there of 20 years at least for the original OWASP top 10, that web-oriented one, that would be hard to compete with. And probably it's good to have a higher bar to equal that one. One of the things that also the original OWASP top 10 list said was, don't use this for your Appsec program. Now, of course, it's one of those things that is, on the one hand, it says it. On the other hand, people maybe don't read that part. But you, Grant, are skipping perhaps over the list themselves into a new product security capabilities framework. So you are actually trying to do something new and different to help organizations go beyond top 10 lists and do something new. Tell us about now. Let's maybe we'll come back to the list, but tell us a little about this new project.
So the project started out as being just simply how my company does application security with our customers, right? What do we do to help them figure out what capabilities they need to create? And we also realized that it's this thing that we're doing, we're building it with our clients and we're building it with partners, and we should be building it in the open like everything we've made use of, because it leverages things like OWASP SAM. And when we talk about actually doing security testing, we're using things like ASVS, which is, you mentioned the top 10 team say, don't use top 10. They highlight ASVS as the thing you should be using instead. So because we leverage all these OWASP projects in what we do, and because, we're huge fans of OWASP generally, we decided we're going to contribute the framework back. So that's currently what's happening. There will be, all the capabilities are out there. Surprisingly, essentially the process of creating these is look at compliance regulations that you need to comply with. And of course, we started with our customers, things that our customers care about. And then go and work out what do you need to do to actually make that compliant. You and I had a chat a little earlier, and we were talking about how we do threat modeling, and threat modeling is important. But the reason we do compliance is because somebody had a threat model somewhere that we have to try and have, controls in place for, or capabilities to prevent us from stumbling into that threat or having that threat take over our business. And Adam Shostak did the reverse engineering of the threat model for, I think it was the DSS. And that was brilliant work. So we've done the same thing with what we're doing with capabilities. We look at the frameworks, we tear apart what those frameworks actually expect you to do, and then we say, all right, so you clearly need to have a capability to do X in order to achieve this outcome. And of all the frameworks we looked at so far, there are about 32, maybe 33 capabilities. So not that many, right? Not that many things you have to do. And threat modeling.
The power of two.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that, one of my first reactions to, so this is from the, application security project, OWASP is application security. You mentioned SAM, you mentioned ASVS, but this one's deliberately called product security capability framework. Now, I don't necessarily want to navel gaze too much on titles and names, but how deliberate was that choice rather than just an application security capability framework?
So it absolutely is deliberate. The decision to go with product security is because AppSec is a part of what you do when you're talking about securing a product you're creating, but a large number of the the threats, a large number of the concerns that we have in AppSec are actually outside the sphere of the people who are generally involved in application security, i.e. application security engineers, developers. It tends to get bigger than that, right? There's some business decisions, some product choices that are made. And even if we talk about the small things, like who decides which story is going to be dealt with this iteration? Is it that new feature that our customers are clamoring for? Is it that feature set that we need to have in order to beat our competitors out? Or is it that backlog of items that the security team sent me with potential vulnerabilities? Like, which one of those is going to get the leeway? And it's not the devs that make that choice. And if it was, they might make the right choice. The people who do make those choices are the product owners. So you have to include product in here because they make the decisions about what you get the opportunity to actually work on will be.
So then how then does it a little bit, speaking of SAM as a maturity model, and here we're talking about capabilities, help us understand, if I've already started on a journey with SAM, do I need to stop and now get off the exit and hop on this route? How should we approach these two, or how are they related?
So SAM is an internal compliance that you're trying to achieve, a certain standard of doing things that you want to have. So we see SAM as an input to the product security capability framework in exactly the same way as the GDPR or NIS2 or any of the NIST standards, any of these external regulatory frameworks. So if you want to score well in SAM, then how do you go about doing that? Well, you can go look at what the SAM requirements are, and you can go and figure out what things you need to do in order to achieve those. Or you can do, we've already done that meta-analysis, and you can just go and do the things that are in the product security capability framework. So if you follow these capabilities, if you ensure that if you're doing threat modeling, then that's going to help you achieve some components of your SAM assessment. So it'll help you get to the level of SAM maturity that you want to be at.
So could you give us you mentioned sort of those 32 items that within this framework. Give us a little bit of a flavor of what maybe one or two of those items look like. And here, one of the reasons I'm asking is, get a sneak peek at what's coming out this week that you'll be releasing, as well as kind of the burden of that. Because you did mention, this isn't just for developers. I'm kind of curious to hear, how do people participate in these particular items?
Okay, so let's take two at sort of opposite ends of the framework. I'll start with business impact assessments. In order to determine what level of security you need to have in a particular product, you need to figure out what the impact of various things that could go wrong with that product would have on your business. So at a very high level, you need to be able to do business impact assessments for your products, for the products you have in your suite. Now, that's stuff that's probably not being done by a development team. There's definitely going to be somebody like some kind of product owner involved in that, somebody who understands what the value this product has to our customers. And there's going to be other individuals involved in that too. People who are operating the product are going to be involved in that conversation. The other end of the spectrum, if we look at things like incident detection or incident response, if we take incident detection as an example here, I can also use that to highlight the types of things that you need in order to achieve this capability. So incident detection, a good way to do incident detection is you have a security operations center. You have a SOC. That SOC means that you have dedicated individuals who are going to be looking for issues. Those individuals have their time specifically allocated to do that, and they have the skill set necessary in order to do that. But they're missing one thing in order to be able to do that well, and that is information. So you've got your SOC, and you've got a dev team, and the dev team's decided that their log files are all going to just be lol fail. That makes it really hard to do any kind of incident detection or any kind of incident response that follows on that. So incident detection, incident response, business impact assessments, these are examples of capabilities you need to have in your organization.
And clearly, very much your SOC, your dev team, they can't be siloed because, as you pointed out, if you're not generating that information in the first place, you're not helping the SOC. But probably conversely, if the SOC isn't explaining this is information that's helpful to us, the developers didn't know. Oh, we can just throw that print line in there, or our printf debugging, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Bearing in mind that logging is a double-edged sword, right? Too much logging is just as bad some cases as too little.
part of this too is that I'm trying to think of scale here. Is one thing to have like SAM that can just take a lot of effort. Even just doing compliance can take a lot of effort to understand the policies, et cetera. So what does this look like in terms of a burden to try and get started? Meaning, do we need the FANG or the whatever the Googles and Metas acronyms are these days, and that type of security org to be able to do this, or can we do this with a team of 1 or 2 people?
Yeah, so scale is very important for us because we have some customers who are incredibly small, like dev teams of 5, 6 people, who are building very, 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 very delicate products that deal with data that is incredibly sensitive. And then we have customers who have 30,000 developers, and they're building multiple products all around the world. And they also tend to have either sensitive data or access to financial information or just random marketing stuff. So, the sensitivity may not be as high. So it needs to be able to cover all types of products, and it needs to be able to cover every size of team. Theoretically, the capabilities in the capability framework can all be fulfilled by a single dev who also happens to be the product owner because he's writing the code himself. In fact, we've done this with the Cornucopia. So Cornucopia is one of the OWASP projects that I project lead. And there is a digital version of Cornucopia, which we're also going to be releasing the software for, which is currently just Toby, my business partner. He is the product owner. I kind of give him ideas because I run a lot of the threat modeling sessions with it. But essentially, he's the product owner and the developer for that. But we apply the capability framework to that dev environment where it's just one dev who does everything, or a product owner who writes all the code. And it works there as well. I mean, it's how you implement these capabilities is very much left up to the organization that's doing the work. Just knowing that you need to do these things or have the capability to do these things is the first step. That's really what the capability framework provides.
I want to shift a second to talk about then sort of the outcome of the framework. And here, I want to perhaps be proactive in the same way that the OWASP top 10 list became we're compliant with the OWASP top 10 list, or we scan for the OWASP top 10 list. These are marketing and common terms that were, there were unpleasant ways that was approached. For the product security capabilities framework, is the outcome we're secure or I'm secure. Now, I'm making that very binary as a bit of an exaggeration, but the question inside there is, what does it look like to be following this? Or just more directly, how do I know I'm more secure or measure against this framework?
So you can measure against the framework using SAM, right? You can determine how well you are doing by comparing yourself, getting the maturity model, which ties quite nicely into the framework. The framework also has different levels of, and we've kind of broken up. We hear about people, process, and technologies being things that are necessary to get work done, especially in an information world. We've taken the view of it as being more opportunity, understanding, and information. And I kind of highlighted those 3 items when I talked about the instant response thing. So having the right level of understanding to perform the capability, and your understanding can go from a level 1 all the way up to level 5. And it's all going to be based on, the way in which your understanding exists, or whether we measure your understanding, it's going to be on the, and I've got the model now. What's the model that's used to describe understanding in an academic sense?
Drawing a blank right now. This is what happens when we do everything live. It'll come back to us, I'm sure, once we do. And listeners, we'll throw in the show notes or let us know.
Ironically, if I plot the capability framework, it'll be right there on the site. So let me grab that for a second.
As you're doing that, another thing to think about too is you're talking about like the understanding. You gave us that SOC example. Mm-hmm. Here in the US, we have CISA talking about secure design. They were making big deals about this. Here's our long, multi-page PDF about a couple aspects that are secure design. So I want to kind of tie that into this, maybe as what does this look like from an application or from a product becoming more secure? What does, what's an artifact that might come out of this beyond just understanding? Meaning we can point and say, we have a sandbox, we're using process isolation. We're using a development framework. I'm being very tactical in these examples, but I'm just trying to tease out some things to see how, what emerges from using this framework.
So the framework is about the capabilities your team or the individuals involved in product delivery need to have. The framework deals with some risk management components, talking about the continuous capability improvements, things that you need to do in order to stay up to date with what's going on. It talks about things like threat intelligence. It talks about, I mentioned business impact assessments. It also goes into things like product design, where you have to have the capability to select the right product components that you're going to be using in building your product. Like what databases are you going to use and what SaaS offerings are you going to make use of. It also talks about actual product implementation. So things like threat modeling, things like functional analysis for security. So actual agile threat modeling each story. So what will you have is you will create a series of capabilities across your product delivery organization. There is an example of a RACI, so who is accountable for those capabilities being there and who's actually going to be involved in making them happen, so who's responsible for them. It will also, and as I said, we measure understanding, and Bloom's taxonomy is the word I couldn't think of earlier. So it measures your understanding, it measures the information that you have, so what you will be able to do is, at the end of the day, determine what level of capability do you need to have in order to meet your compliance requirements. Looking at, okay, we need to be GDPR compliant, which means we need to be able to do these capabilities to at least this level. And there's some meta-analysis that we've done that's part of the publication around why we think GDPR requires you to be able to do, agile threat modeling at least a level 3 for knowledge and 4 for understanding and 2 for information, whatever it might be. Right? We've done the analysis on that and we've published those findings. Hopefully, because it's now published or will be published shortly, it will be we'll get a bunch of feedback on that. But what are you creating as an organization? You're creating the ability for your teams to do these things, and sometimes they will be using tools. Sometimes they'll be referring back to OWASP projects like SAM for measuring maturity, or like the ASVS if we're talking about actually doing product testing, security testing. And sometimes they will be just simply good engineering practices that you're probably already doing. That might be enough to get you to the level of this capability that you need in order to meet the requirements that are laid down by whatever compliance regulations you're trying to follow.
You're mentioning go ahead, Kara.
Oh, yeah. This might take us a little bit off track, so we can always circle back if we need to. But Grant, I know you mentioned this is like kind of in the domain of product security, but what level of authority do you think you need to have in order to get all this executed?
So buy-in needs to happen at whoever is responsible, so the head of the product delivery organization. So if that's the VP for product delivery, or if that's the VP for development or whatever their title might be, or if it's the CPTO or the CTO's office or chief product officer, whoever's responsible for, we have product owners and we have developers and we have people in operations. So that whole life cycle. So they own a number of these capabilities as well, right? And one of the very first capabilities is you have the ability to create an organization where the right people have the right opportunity to do the things that they need to do. And that usually goes all the way back up to CPTO or somewhere like that.
Oh, John, I think he has a question, but you're on mute.
Helps when I can, I need other people beside me to hear me. Grant, I want to ask you a question that's not meant to be offensive.
Sure.
Why do you think this is going to have more success than other projects at OWASP?
So which projects at OWASP would I be comparing it to? Because some have been really successful.
Very, very good point. Let's sort of dial that in a little. I've been sitting here listening to you, and this is super interesting. But what I'm trying to figure out is, obviously, I'm not talking about top 10. But if you think about, one way I can look at this is another framework. One way I can look at this is, I've already got the capability maturity model. There's multiple of those out there. Some are good. And I'm sort of thinking, you mentioned VP product CPO type person who's like trying to figure out how are they going to figure out what they want for their application as they come and look at this and it gets refined over, the next coming months.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to draw me to this? Does that make sense?
So I think the first group of people who are going to find this useful are, and that's why we started talking to them first, is going to be the SAM community. So it's going to be organizations that are helping companies to build AppSec programs. And the problem is we go and we build AppSec programs, but they don't have the right level of buy-in, and they don't cover enough of the program for you to actually get a successful outcome. But I think this will help SAM practitioners and organizations that are already using SAM to figure out what they need to do in order to get better SAM scores. That's the first group.
Yeah.
The reason I think it'll be successful is because it's been successful with our customers, right? It's helped us frame the work that we do with our customers. So we do things in a consistent way, and so that we know that we can compare customer A with customer B. And even though they're in different markets, we can see how they're growing towards a better level of maturity in SAM because they're applying these capabilities and they're working on whatever they've decided to do in order to achieve this capability area's outcome. It also means that although I have preferences for how you should be doing things like threat modeling, you don't have to do threat modeling the way that Grant does threat modeling and still have, and yet still have the capability in your product security delivery function to do threat modeling. Like, I think threat modeling should be done by developers, right? As part of, hey, I'm going to be building this massive set of features. Let me figure out what could go wrong with that thing that I'm building. But if you want to do threat modeling as a security architecture thing, sure, you can do that too. You can still get the capability in a different way.
And I think that's actually a really great answer, because one of the things we've talked about here on the show many times is how do you get, if I put my security nerd hat on, my developer nerd hat on, how do I get buy-in at a higher level? And probably I think what's missing in some cases is when do I need to, or how do I need to, or how do I approach that? So maybe hopefully that framework can sort of help with that, sort of help people float things up to get that covered.
I think the one big realization that we had was that a lot of the time accountability is in the wrong area. There's a security team and they're accountable for security, but they can't actually influence any of the things that devs are doing in order to make things more secure, right? They're just shouting in the void most of the time because they don't decide what devs work on. So helping the organization understand how you are accountable for this thing because you control the means of doing this thing. Okay, so you don't have all the knowledge necessary to help your team do the right things for security, but this is what you can do. You can create those opportunities. And you should be creating those opportunities, and you need to be doing them to this level, whatever is determined based on how sensitive the data is in your product. And hey, wait, it's all about your product. It's your data, your customers. It's the expectation they have of the quality of this product. And also, I think the other thing is that, the ISO 25010, like, it's a brilliant thing that so few people in development even know about. In fact, so few people in security even know about it, and yet it's the quality model for software delivery, right? It's where security is, but we don't use it. And showing customers that for the first time, they go, wait, this makes sense now. It's also why we put security there.
Part of that sets up a question too. What you've been talking about is, you mentioned developers, the head of product, CTO. You mentioned threat modeling done by the developers themselves, which I strongly agree. But where is AppSec in here? And I'm curious, how should an AppSec role adapt to this? Because even with SAM, a lot of it is building capabilities into the CI/CD pipeline. It's very development heavy in many ways, these processes. So even within product security capability frameworks, how should an AppSec role perhaps adapt to supporting the future of what a secure product looks like?
Well, I think you've kind of nailed it there already, right? It's supporting. You talked about FANG earlier, and Google has SRE, and because they have scale, you're not Google, you don't have Google's problems. We know this, but we still have SREs in functions in much smaller organizations because it sometimes makes sense. I think AppSec are going to become either part of that SRE type function, a group of individuals with specialized skills who consult dev teams on things like threat modeling, or who consult dev teams on things like how do we get threat intelligence right, and all the other things that security folk have got specialized skills in. They're either going to become a function like SRE, providing those skills on a consulting basis, and so my customers aren't calling me to help them do that. They will have a team to do it. Or they're going to be SRE. It's going to be folks in what currently is the site reliability engineering team who do more than just site reliability. They do availability, and they do performance, and they do all the other things that are in the ISO 25010. Why not security? Why do they not have the security capabilities built in there? But I think AppSec teams are going to have to become better at providing developers with advice. Well, actually, better at providing that whole chain with advice, because the product owner is going to need advice from somebody with skills in AppSec arena as well.
So we've talked about, we started off talking about top 10s, and here's a neat project, this product security capabilities framework that will be going live this very week. And we have some links in the show notes to a couple of the resources. Grant, you've been obviously intimately involved with OWASP for a long time, and you've seen changes over 2023, Zed Attack Proxy, for example, one of those projects moving out of it. But then this product security capabilities framework, emerging from OWASP. What are some things that you would love to see in the future of OWASP for 2024?
Well, I believe that OWASP, in order for us to win, right? OWASP is no more insecure software. There's, in order for us to make application security work, and OWASP to be the thing that helps to do that, we need to get involved with more developers, which means OWASP needs to be reaching out to more developer communities and needs to be building more projects that are focused on that developer experience and helping developers do security better. The projects that are most successful, John, that you kind of alluded at earlier, tend to be projects that have done that, right? They've helped devs to the cheat sheet series. Brilliant example of an OWASP project that is successful. And it's successful because it's helping the people who can actually make a difference to do that. So I think that's what needs to happen. And I'm seeing more of that kind of draw within OWASP projects, more of that kind of view with a lot of the OWASP, the global conferences. We're seeing those kinds of talks being selected more and more often. So there's definitely a move towards luring in the devs. But I think more than that, I think OWASP people need to go and talk at dev conferences. There should be familiar faces in our community talking at anything Java related or .NET related, or anything where you've got a few 100,000 devs packed around tables. So I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, that's an amazing message to, rather than just say, oh, come talk to us, we're important. Why don't we invert that sense and say, actually, developers, you're important, you're writing the code. By the way, here's some things to think about. Here's a way to approach threat modeling. Here's a way to approach that product security capabilities, or your software assurance maturity model.
Exactly.
These types of things. Grant, you did say, you didn't get a chance to do your top 10 lists of top 10 lists, but do you have a favorite top 10 list that is lurking out there?
I think right now my favorite top 10 list is probably the LLM one, mostly because of it's brand new. It's creaky, fresh, and shiny still, but there's a level of thinking that's gone into it that I think is at the right level for a top 10. And it also looks at things more broadly than just what can break my AI, and looks at things like how can my AI break my business, or how can my AI break my community and my world, right? Because Skynet's a thing, right?
Our first Skynet reference of the year, indeed. But I think I'll add to that too. Is one of the things about that top 10 list is that a lot of the follow-up work, that they're not keeping themselves beholden to really 10 items. They're actually having a broader conversation that sort of the 10 items was, I'll say gimmick, was the seed to start that broader conversation about impacting my apps, my business, etc.
But by the way, that's become Harold's go-to answer. If you want to create a top 10 list, why limit yourself to just 10 things?
Wonderful answer. Let's see the year of, it's 2024, your top 24 reasons to do something. Grant, one of the final things we have been asking our guests this year too is we're building a list of superlatives, sort of like a yearbook here in the US. And one of those superlatives is AppSec is most likely to what? How would you fill in the blank for that phrase?
So when I was thinking about this, the first thing that came to mind is actually something we talked about already a little earlier. And I think AppSec is going to become part of ordinary delivery. Some of it is going to be developers doing AppSec, and some of it is going to be either SRE providing security capabilities or security teams providing SRE style. So I think AppSec is going to disappear. AppSec is going to become delivery, just like DevSecOps is just DevOps. It's just delivery.
Honestly, I would love to see that. It's just one of those things we should be putting ourselves out of a job and just go back to that era of software quality with that security as a one of those non-functional requirements, something that you were just telling us only a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Well, Grant, I think we unfortunately have to wrap up here, and but there's a lot more we could talk about because there's SRE, DevSecOps versus DevOps, not in the sense of naming things, but what should people be doing, I think, are the healthier conversations. So we're going to have you back to continue some of those threads as well.
Absolutely. And once we've got the product security capability framework out there, there's a lot of those things are hopefully going to be enshrined quite well in there. I promised I would make it a little bit more accessible than most other OWASP projects. So there'll be video. So if you're not keen on reading walls of text, feel free to watch the videos as well.
That's awesome. And we'll make sure to keep that updated. And it's also a new project, so I'm sure this is also a great time for people to provide feedback, help get it off the ground.
Absolutely. And there are hundreds of frameworks we still want to map to. So please do. In fact, I'll be spending a little bit of time this week with Spiros talking about how we can get more involved in what OpenCRE are doing. So yeah, watch this space and please get involved.
Watch the space, please get involved, and watch this beard as well, because Grant is eminently recognizable, and we appreciate the work you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank Akira and John. Thank everybody for listening. We're going to take a quick break and return with news of the week.